how did Shatterline go from a peak of 20,000 players to now only 212 players, not even 2 years later? Well, it all started fairly quickly. A few days after launch in September 2022, it got some pretty negative criticism, with a lot of the community stating both of the following. Netcode seems like I'm constantly dying or getting killed behind walls. And they also mentioned that using this input fell off, saying that controller gameplay is rough. So was this a means to an end, or was there more that went wrong? Shatterline is described as a fierce, intense, free-to-play first-person shooter, and considering it's free-to-play, you would have thought it got a lot more traction. The game offers roguelike co-op PvE modes as well as PvP experiences, and I've personally played the Expedition PvE mode, both on launch and more recently, but more on that later. It has 8 operatives with unique abilities and 27 weapons with a variety of attachments to customize your guns, and also you unlock blueprints to add perks to your weapons, creating that constant gameplay loop. And in my personal opinion, the best part of this was the progress that carried between both modes. So what you unlocked in PvP carried across to PvE and vice versa. And speaking to friends who played this game early on, they actually said the game lacked any form of rank mode. But I didn't just take their word for it. I searched a few Steam reviews and it seemed like they at least tried. The reviews stated they briefly put in a rank mode, but it was such a massive failure due to how terribly the game is balanced that they had to take it back out, just to act like it never existed. All this to avoid just balancing their game and listening to their players even slightly. But hang on a minute, before we get too carried away, who are the developers that are not listening to their community? And is there maybe a reason behind it? Well, FragLab is a studio based in Kiev in Ukraine, and we all are aware of the devastating war that is taking place. Despite all that, they are managing to develop, update and produce content on this game, which is actually quite remarkable when you think about it. And there were rumors to state that maybe this is why their planned release date of Feb 2023 was missed. However, there were some signs that after February, it seemed like Shatterline took a turn for the worse, with one review on Steam saying, around March 2023, FragLab introduced a new feature into the PvE of this game. This mechanic was named Stagger. This essentially made it so that when you got hit, you would be slowed down astronomically, being effectively unable to move, hence being unable to dodge enemy attacks for the entire duration of this time. This change essentially punished the player for engaging in any fight whatsoever, to the point where it became much more efficient to just blitz past every single enemy you encounter unless absolute necessary. And it didn't just end there. The next change come 1 month later, and again it would appear that it was another unwelcome change, well, according to the community. FragLab introduced a nerf to the health regeneration mechanic. This nerf made healing so imaginably slow while moving that the only option was to sit in a corner in order to be able to regenerate health. The fast-paced PvP was almost crippled directly because of this change. Despite the player dissatisfaction with this new system, the only action that took place from FragLab was a very slight buff to the already heavily nerfed regeneration. And this wasn't enough. This made it so that playing characters such as Malva, who has a healing ability and healing ultimate, was almost necessary for personal survival. And when FragLab realized that every single player unanimously hated this change, they reverted the change to be PvE only. And as of the last time I played, this was only half of what they needed to do, which was to remove the terrible change altogether. And whilst there were a lot of positive reviews of some of the things that came a bit later, it seemed like further frustration was brewing with its already diminishing player base. FragLab nerfed bunny hopping to the point where it's entirely impossible and impractical. And we all know what happened to the last Call of Duty when movement was affected. Now, it's hard to tell whether these are just a few standalone bad reviews as you'd usually get, or if this is a huge contributing factor as to why the player base took such a nosedive. So I decided to load up Reddit, considering the game got a brand new update, and I was shocked to find that the bad reviews continued. That said, this game is only on Steam and gets 100 to 300 players a day. How is this game not shut down yet? Hell, there's still not even a single player leveling system for your account level, and still no new operators. But with all that being said, I played this game very early on and I actually have some really positive things to say about it. And at the end, I'll cover what the community think the game needs in order to get back and beyond its peak of 20,000 players. Now for me, the expedition mode has grown massively. When the game first launched, you would enter the mode and fight against 3 of the same bosses pretty much. And you would go in and just obtain blueprints, which you would then use to craft weapon perks. And since then, they have made the expedition so much more free-flowing. It now plays and feels a bit more like Call of Duty Zombies. You have complete free control of the map, and you choose how and where you want to go. And the longer you stay, the higher the risk, and the better the loot. Not only this, they've added some more in-depth features, adding skill trees to each character, and this can tailor the way that you want to go in and complete the expedition with your friends. And really, as I stated, the expedition is where the game really excels at. If you are anything like me and kind of sick of the whole multiplayer cheating episode that's going online right now, this was really refreshing and a relaxing way to play FPS without taking itself too seriously. Now also they added plant the bomb mode, which has been added to the game recently. This has been completely reworked. I played a few games actually and it plays really well, and I had some fun on it despite waiting a while to get into a game. So the question really is, what direction do Frag Labs need to take the game in order to regain its old player base and to attract a bunch of new ones? And I think the most obvious thing they can do is a console release. The game since its launch is better optimized for controller in my opinion, so I do feel it's ready to be rolled out to both Xbox and PlayStation. I think by doing this and making it free to play, there will definitely be a whole bunch of new players willing to give the game a chance. I mean, under the hood, the gameplay, the game modes, the expedition is a really fun experience, and the only thing it lacks right now is a reason to keep playing. So I think they need to add a rank mode or a global leaderboard so that players can be competitive against each other. And I know this kind of goes against the chilled experience I mentioned earlier, but the bottom line is, I think there is a large audience out there who would like to compete for something, and whether you like it or not, a ranked mode or leaderboard definitely adds that. The other thing, based on a ton of reviews I've read, is they're crying out for new characters. I mean, I only played the game in the first few weeks and I managed to get all the characters to level 8, and this was over 2 years ago. If a new character was to drop, I think a lot of old players would be inclined to just re-download the game and drop back in and give them a try. And when they do, I think they would be pleasantly surprised by all the new features they've implemented. So where does this leave the game right now? Has it fallen beyond the point of no return? I would say I personally don't think so. Only time will tell, but I do think releasing to console will be a very wise move by the studio. And I also think it's absolutely commendable that they have continued to update the game despite all the circumstances that they find themselves in. And I think it's fair to say a lot of developers give up on their games, and I'm so glad to see that Frag Labs have not. But if you'd like to find out what happened to this game, despite the fact that Dr. Disrespect and Mr. Beef both promoted it, then check this video out here.